don't need to come by, Dad. I'm just too busy right now." That's what she said. Just like that. No anger, no emotion. Like she was crossing off an appointment. "My name's Henry Lawson, 72, from Tacoma, Washington. I've heard plenty of excuses in my life. But hearing too busy for me from my only daughter, that one felt different. I remember gripping the phone a little tighter, hoping I'd misheard. "Busy? It's your birthday, Emily." She sighed. "I know, Dad. I've just got a lot going on at work, and Mark's parents are coming over. It's not a good time." Her tone was polite, professional almost, like she was talking to a client she wanted off the line. "All right," I said. "Maybe I'll just stop by for a minute. I've got something for you." "Dad," she said, sharper this time, "please don't. I'll call you later this week, okay?" Then the line went dead. I sat there for a while, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. Silence can sound louder than shouting when it comes from someone you love. On the table beside me sat a small wrapped box. Navy paper, silver ribbon. Inside was a gold locket that once belonged to her mother, Ellen. I'd had it cleaned, polished, and engraved with a single word. Still, because no matter how far Emily drifted, I still loved her, still waited, still hoped. I stared at the box and thought about not going. About respecting her space, like she always said. But the idea of sitting home on her birthday, pretending I hadn't heard her voice, felt worse. So I put on my old jacket, the one she bought me for Father's Day years ago, when she still called every night, and I got in my truck. The drive wasn't far, maybe 30 minutes. Her neighborhood sat just outside the city, newer homes with tidy lawns and perfect driveways. As I turned onto her street, I caught myself rehearsing what I'd say if she opened the door angry. Maybe I'd just hand her the gift and leave. Maybe I'd tell her I missed her mother, missed us. But when I parked by the curb, I saw her car wasn't there. Just the one her husband drove, parked crooked by the mailbox. I walked up to the porch, the boards creaking beneath my shoes. She'd replaced the old welcome mat I gave her with one that said, "No shoes, no stress." I almost laughed at that. I sat down on the step, holding the gift box in my lap. I figured I'd wait a bit. Maybe she was running errands. Maybe she'd be home soon. The wind was cold that morning, carrying the smell of rain. I remembered when this same porch used to be where she'd sit with her mother, painting rocks and drinking lemonade. She used to wave at me when I came home from work, shouting, "Daddy's truck! Daddy's home!" Now I was just the man waiting outside her door. Hours passed. I watched cars come and go, listened to kids playing down the street, and checked my watch more times than I could. Count, noon, then 2, then 4. Nobody came home. I opened the small card attached to the gift and read what I'd written that morning. "Happy birthday, sweetheart. Your mother would be proud of the woman you've become. Love always, Dad." I folded it back carefully and sighed. The sky started to dim around 5. Porch lights flickered on up and down the street. Hers stayed off. Still, I didn't leave. I couldn't. Because a father's hope doesn't check the time, it just waits. And that's exactly what I did. Sitting on her porch with a birthday gift she didn't have time to open. By the time the streetlights came on, the neighborhood had that stillness that only comes with early evening. Quiet, but not peaceful. The kind of quiet that makes you think too much. I was still sitting there, on that porch that used to feel like home. My knees ached from the cold steps, and the gift box sat in my lap like a reminder I didn't want to face. I looked at the front door, at the faint smudge of paint near the handle. I remembered helping her pick that color. Sage green, Ellen's favorite. Emily had been 22 then, just moved in, full of plans and light. She'd said, "Dad, this house will always have a spot for you." That was 10 years ago. I don't think she even remembers saying it. The mail truck rattled by, stopping for a second at her box before rolling on. I caught the driver's curious glance. An old man sitting on a porch that wasn't his. I smiled faintly and nodded, pretending it didn't sting. The air smelled like wet leaves. I pulled my jacket tighter and leaned back against the post, letting memories do what they always do. Play the past like an old film. I saw her again as a kid, sitting cross-legged with crayons, drawing hearts that said, "Me and Dad." I remembered her first bike ride, her graduation, her mother's funeral. Every version of her I'd ever known passed by in silence, one after another, until they all blurred together. Then came the thought I'd been avoiding all day. Maybe she really didn't want me there. Maybe I wasn't just waiting. Maybe I'd been dismissed. The light in the neighbor's house flicked on, and through the window I saw Mrs. Greer, same woman who brought us casseroles after Ellen passed, glance my way. She tilted her head like she wanted to say something but decided not to. I don't blame her. There's not much you can say to a man waiting for someone who doesn't want to see him. I looked down at the box again. The ribbon had come loose in the damp air, and the corner of the paper curled up just enough for me to see the edge of the velvet inside. I wanted to keep it perfect, the way Ellen would have wrapped it. She was good at making small things look special. I thought about leaving it on the porch, just setting it by the door and walking away. But something in me refused. It wasn't pride. It was presence. As long as I was there, waiting, I wasn't forgotten. So I stayed. Around sunset, I took the folded letter out of my jacket pocket, the one I'd written this morning but never mailed. It wasn't much, just a simple note. "Emily, I'm proud of you. You've made a good life. I just wish you'd let me be part of it again." I read it under the fading light, the words soft and shaky, then slipped it back into my pocket. The temperature dropped. I could see my breath now. Cars drove by less often. The sky went purple, then gray. I listened to the wind pushing through the trees and thought how strange it was that a man can spend half his life building a family and the other half waiting outside of it. The porch light still hadn't turned on. I shifted, my back stiff, my hands numb from the cold railing. Somewhere down the street, someone was grilling. The faint smell of smoke and meat hung in the air. For a moment, it reminded me of all the summers Ellen and I spent out here laughing while Emily chased fireflies in the yard. I remember telling Ellen once, "Someday, when she's older, she'll sit on this porch with us again." Ellen smiled and said, "She'll come back, Henry, because love has a way of circling home." But as I sat there now, watching the sun disappear, I wasn't so sure. I whispered to the dark, "You were always the hopeful one, Ellen. I'm just the one who stayed." The air grew still. The light in the sky faded completely. And the last sound I heard was the distant slam of a car door somewhere down the block. But not hers. It was around 7 when I finally heard footsteps on the sidewalk. For a moment, my heart jumped. I thought it might be her. I sat up straight, brushing the dust from my sleeves, trying not to look like a man who'd been waiting all day. But it wasn't Emily. It was Mr. Henderson, the neighbor across the street. Retired postman, same age as me. We'd talked a few times back when Ellen was still alive. He slowed when he saw me sitting there. "Henry?" he called out. "That you?" Yeah, I said, forcing a smile. Evening, Frank. He walked up to the edge of the porch, leaning on the railing. You been sitting here long? Just waiting for my daughter, I said. She's out somewhere, I guess. He frowned slightly, his eyes kind but uncertain. I've seen you out here a few hours now. You sure she knows you're coming? I nodded. She knows. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but instead, he reached into the paper bag he was carrying and pulled out a thermos. Brought some soup from my wife. Chicken noodle. You look like you could use it. I took it gratefully. Thanks, Frank. You two still take care of each other, huh? He chuckled softly. We try. 42 years, and she still tells me how to stir the pot. Then his voice lowered. You know, I don't see Emily much these days. Used to, back when she moved in. She'd wave when she drove by, stop for a chat sometimes, not anymore. She's busy, I said automatically. He nodded, but there was that look again. Pity trying to disguise itself as politeness. I get it. Kids have their own lives. My son calls twice a year. Says he's too busy too. I looked down at the thermos in my hands. Seems to be going around. He sighed. You know, some folks were saying she's been meeting with realtors, thinking of moving. I looked up. Moving? That's what I heard. Might be nothing. Just talk. I stared at the door behind me. The same door Ellen and I painted white when Emily bought this place. She hasn't said anything to me. Maybe she didn't want to worry you, Frank said. Or maybe she just didn't think you'd want to know. He realized how that sounded and quickly added, She's a good girl, Henry. Don't take it too hard. I nodded slowly, but my stomach had gone hollow. Yeah, I murmured. She's a good girl. He shifted awkwardly. Anyway, if you need anything, you know where we are. Thanks, Frank. When he walked away, I watched him cross the street, his figure fading into the orange glow of his porch light. It struck me how every house on that block had a light burning, except Emily's. The soup was still warm. I took a sip, but I couldn't taste it. My thoughts were racing too fast. Realtors, moving. I looked around at the yard, the flower bed I'd built for her wedding gift, now overgrown. The oak tree I planted with Ellen 20 years ago, its roots reaching deeper than any of us. Everything in that space held pieces of us, and she was just selling it. The sky had turned deep blue by then, the kind of blue that swallows everything whole. I stood and took a few slow steps toward the mailbox, my legs stiff from sitting too long. Her name was still printed beside mine. Emily Lawson, Henry Lawson. I traced the letters with my thumb. She must have forgotten to take it off after she bought the place outright. Or maybe she'd left it there out of habit. Either way, it felt like a small lie in metal form. My name's still there, but my place already gone. I turned back toward the porch. The gift box was still where I'd left it. I picked it up, brushing away a few fallen leaves, and held it for a long time. Inside, the locket waited, untouched. For a second, I thought about driving home, but something in me, maybe pride, maybe love, told me to stay. I wasn't sure which one hurt more. So I sat back down, the thermos warm against my palms, and whispered to the night, If she's really moving, Ellen, where will I wait for her next time? The wind answered softly through the trees. No words, just the kind of sound that means you're the only one still listening. The sun slipped below the rooftops, and with it went the last bit of warmth. By 8 o'clock, the air had turned sharp and still. I sat there, hands folded over the gift box, watching the sky darken in slow motion. The porch creaked when I shifted. It was the same sound it made when Emily used to jump off the steps as a kid, her laughter echoing through the yard. Back then, that sound meant joy. Tonight, it just meant time passing. A car turned down the street, headlights sweeping over the house, then fading as it drove past. Not hers. Another followed, slowing for a moment before pulling into a neighbor's driveway. Not hers either. The sound of crickets filled the air. A single moth circled the porch light above me, fluttering in and out of the glow. It was the only light left on. Every other house had drawn its curtains tight against the night. I checked my watch. 8:47. My back ached. My legs were stiff. But something inside me refused to move, like if I just waited long enough, she'd pull into the driveway, see me sitting there, and remember what family looked like. It's strange how hope can keep you still. I don't know how much time passed before it happened, but I remember the moment clearly. That soft click when the porch light above me went out. At first, I thought it was a power issue. Then I looked through the window beside the door and saw the house inside was dark too. The lights in the hallway, the kitchen, even the faint glow from the living room. Gone. It wasn't a power outage. She'd turned them off. My throat tightened. I sat there in the dark, the night pressing against me. Somewhere deep down, I think I'd been waiting for that sound. The one that tells you you're not just forgotten, you're unwelcome. I whispered, "All right, Emily. I get it." My voice didn't sound like mine anymore. It was rough, small, worn thin by all the things I hadn't said. The wind picked up, carrying the faint smell of rain. I could hear the rustle of leaves in the yard, the faint whistle through the gutters. It was the same house, but it didn't breathe the same way anymore. It used to feel alive, like love had soaked into the walls. Now it was hollow. I shifted the gift box in my hands, and the ribbon came loose. The lid fell open, spilling the locket onto the porch boards with a soft clink. I froze, staring at it in the dark. It caught a sliver of moonlight, gold against gray wood. I picked it up and ran my thumb over the engraving. Still. I pressed the latch, and it opened with a soft click. Inside was the tiny photo Ellen had placed there years ago. Emily, maybe 6 years old, her arms around my neck, both of us grinning like the world couldn't touch us. It hit me harder than I expected. The memory, the warmth of that day, gone in a blink, like the light over my head. I closed the locket and held it tight in my fist, whispering to no one, "You used to love me like that." For a long while, I didn't move. Just sat there, listening to the hum of the night, the sound of my own heart trying to steady itself. Finally, I stood. My knees popped. My back protested, but I stood anyway. I placed the gift, now unwrapped, imperfect, by her front door. Then I walked down the steps and stood at the curb, looking back one last time. The porch was dark now. The same place that once glowed with laughter was just shadow and silence. I whispered, "Happy birthday, kiddo," and turned toward the truck. The engine started on the first try. It always did. As I pulled away, I looked in the rearview mirror, the house shrinking behind me until the only thing left was the faint reflection of my own headlights. But even then, I couldn't stop glancing back. Because hope doesn't die when the lights go out. It just waits for morning. I drove until the road turned to fog and silence. That kind of early morning stillness where even your own thoughts sound loud. The rain had started, thin at first, just enough to streak the windshield. I pulled over near the old park where I used to take Emily on weekends, back when she thought every puddle was an ocean worth jumping in. The locket was still in my hand. I hadn't let it go since I picked it up off her porch. My thumb traced the edges again, over and over, until the gold felt warm. Ellen's engraving glinted faintly in the dashlight. Still. I opened it again, not sure why. Maybe to see her face once more in that tiny photo. But this time, I noticed something I hadn't before. A small fold behind the picture. The metal backing was slightly lifted, like it had been pried open once and pressed back down. Curiosity got the better of me. I slid my pocket knife under the lip and gently lifted the backing plate. Inside, folded so small it was nearly hidden, was a piece of paper. It was old, the kind of paper that yellows at the edges and smells faintly of perfume. Ellen's handwriting covered it, small and neat, exactly the way she used to write grocery lists and love notes. My hands shook as I unfolded it. If she ever forgets who you are, remind her of who she came from. There's an account at Franklin Trust, for Emily's future, for when she's ready to see you as her beginning, not her burden. Let it wait quietly until she remembers. I leaned back in the seat, eyes burning. Ellen, always thinking ahead, always leaving messages for hearts she knew would break someday. She'd opened that account years ago. I remembered signing the paperwork after her diagnosis. We'd called it a college fund back then. I never touched it afterward. Now I realized Ellen had meant for me to keep it untouched until a day like this, when love needed to speak louder than pride. I started the truck again and drove downtown. The city was just waking up. Storefront lights flickering on, buses hissing at every stop. The sign for Franklin Trust Bank looked the same as it had 20 years ago. Inside, a young teller smiled politely. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you?" I set the locket gently on the counter. I need to check on an account. It's been a long time. She typed something into her computer, then looked up. "It's still active, Mr. Lawson. Substantial balance, actually. You're the primary holder." I nodded slowly. "And if I wanted to transfer it to my daughter?" She blinked. "You mean as a gift?" "Not a gift," I said quietly. "A reminder." She didn't understand, but she didn't have to. A few forms, a signature, a steady hand. That's all it took. I left the bank a little lighter than I'd gone in. Outside, the rain had stopped. The world smelled new again. I held the locket in my hand one last time before placing it inside a plain white envelope. I wrote just one line on the front, "For when you're ready to come home." Then I took it back to the bank and asked the teller to attach it to the transfer confirmation they'd send her. "Should I include a name?" she asked. I shook my head. "No. She'll know who it's from." Driving back, I didn't feel angry anymore, just tired. But it was the kind of tired that comes after doing something right. Ellen once told me, "The best way to teach love is to live it quietly." I think I finally understood what she meant. That night, I parked the truck outside my own small house. The rain had left streaks on the windows, reflecting the porch light in tiny broken pieces. I stood there for a moment, breathing it all in. The quiet, the peace, the ache. I looked at the sky and whispered, "I did what you'd have done, Ellen. Now we wait." And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was waiting alone. The next morning came gray and slow, the kind that makes you question if it's really worth getting out of bed. But I did. Old habits, I guess. The truck keys sat on the counter beside an untouched mug of coffee. I wasn't sure why, but I drove back to the bank. Maybe I just wanted to see it through, make sure everything was handled the way I'd meant it to be. When I walked in, the same teller from yesterday recognized me. "Good morning again, Mr. Lawson," she said. "Everything's been processed. Your daughter was notified this morning through her account contact." I nodded. "Did she say anything?" She smiled gently. "Not yet, but I'm sure she'll reach out." I thanked her, then stepped back outside. The air was cool, the clouds breaking just enough to let sunlight spill across the wet pavement. I leaned against the truck door for a while, feeling the warmth on my face. There was a time when I believed money could fix things. Hospital bills, college tuition, even the distance between people. But standing there, I knew better. It's not the money that matters. It's the meaning behind how it's given. I'd given her something she didn't earn but always deserved, a piece of her mother's love, passed quietly through me. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table and pulled out the spare envelope. The one Ellen had left with the lawyer years ago, addressed in her neat handwriting. "For Emily, if I'm not here to remind her." I'd never opened it before. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Inside, a single page. "Sweetheart, your father won't tell you how much he's given. That's not his way. But know this, love isn't measured in gifts or visits. It's measured in patience. If you ever lose sight of his love, look for the quiet things, the steady ones. They're always his." I folded it back and smiled, tears blurring the ink. Ellen always did have a way of saying what I couldn't. I took that letter, sealed it again, and drove to the post office. I left it at the front desk with the same instruction as before. "Deliver when she asks where home is," I told the clerk. He gave me a confused look, but nodded. By the time I got home again, it was late afternoon. The phone sat silent on the counter, the kind of silence that hums like it's holding its breath. I sat down on the porch. Same old chair, same creak beneath my weight. The wind had started up again, carrying the smell of cedar and rain-soaked soil. I looked at the horizon and thought about all the times I'd waited, for her to call, for her to come home, for forgiveness that might never be said out loud. Then I heard it, the faint buzz of my phone. A call, her name on the screen. For a second, I just stared at it. My hands didn't move. Then I answered. "Dad?" Her voice was small, shaky. "Hi, sweetheart." There was silence, then a breath. "I got a message from the bank. There was an envelope with the locket." I didn't say anything. Her voice cracked. "You waited outside that night, didn't you?" "I did," I said softly. "Didn't want to miss your birthday." "I saw you," she whispered. "Through the window. I wanted to come out, I swear, but I didn't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything now," I told her. Another pause. I could hear her crying quietly. "I don't deserve you." "No one has to deserve love, Emily," I said. "They just have to come back to it." The line went quiet again, but this time it felt different, not empty, just full of words she didn't know how to speak yet. Finally, she said, "Can I come by tomorrow? Please?" I closed my eyes, feeling a strange warmth rise in my chest. "You know where I'll be?" When we hung up, I sat there for a long time, watching the porch light flicker in the wind. It hadn't gone out since I'd come home. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was waiting for nothing. She came the next morning just after sunrise. I heard the familiar rumble of her car pulling up, slow and hesitant, like she wasn't sure she belonged there. I stepped outside before she could knock. She stood at the bottom of the porch steps, hands tucked in her coat pockets, hair pulled back the way she used to wear it when she was nervous. "Hey, Dad," she said, softly. "Morning, sweetheart." For a few seconds, we just looked at each other. Two people who used to talk about everything, now struggling to start a sentence. "I brought something," she said, holding out the locket. It hung from a thin gold chain, the same one Ellen used to wear. "It's beautiful. I didn't even realize it was hers until I opened it." I nodded. "Your mom always said it would find its way back to you when you needed it most." She looked down at it, turning it in her hand. It did. The porch creaked beneath my feet as I stepped closer. "You read her note, didn't you?" She nodded. "I did. And I saw the account transfer, the trust. I didn't even know you'd done something like that." "It wasn't about money," I said. "It was about keeping her words alive." She smiled weakly. Mom always knew what we'd need before we did. We both laughed a little at that, though it came out more like a sigh. "I'm sorry, Dad," she said suddenly. The words fell out before she could stop them. "For that night, for everything. I saw you on the porch and just froze. I didn't want to face what I'd become." I shook my head. "You became busy, that's all? Life does that." "No," she said firmly. "I became proud and blind. I thought I was proving something, that I didn't need anyone. But the truth is, I've never stopped needing you." Her voice cracked, and she covered her face for a second. I reached out, my hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "Emily," I said, "your mom used to tell me that love doesn't keep score. It just keeps showing up." She looked up, eyes red. "You shouldn't have to keep showing up for someone who doesn't open the door." I smiled gently. "That's what doors are for, sweetheart. You close them to feel safe, and you open them when you're ready." She laughed through her tears. "You always know what to say." "Not always," I said. "Sometimes I just get lucky." We sat down on the porch together, side by side, watching the morning light crawl across the grass. For a while, neither of us spoke. There was no need. After a few minutes, she reached into her pocket and pulled out an envelope, the one I'd left with the bank. "I got your message," she said. "For when I'm ready to come home." I nodded. "You ready?" She smiled through trembling lips. "Yeah, I think I am." I took her hand. It was cold, but she didn't pull away. "I'm not going anywhere, Emily," I said. "You don't have to earn your way back. Just keep walking toward home." The light caught the locket as she clasped it around her neck. It shimmered once, catching the rising sun. She leaned her head on my shoulder, the same way she used to as a little girl. For the first time in a long while, it felt like the world had stopped trying to prove something. When she finally stood, she looked at me and said, "Can I come by again tomorrow?" I smiled. "You can come by whenever the porch light's on." As she walked back to her car, I watched her pause, turn, and wave, just like she used to when she was small. The wind picked up, brushing through the trees, carrying something that almost sounded like Ellen's laughter. I whispered, "You'd be proud of her, love. She's finding her way back." That evening, after Emily left, I stayed on the porch long after the sun had gone. The air was cool again, but it didn't bite the way it used to. Maybe because there was warmth left behind, in her words, her tears. That quiet moment where we'd finally stopped pretending we didn't miss each other. The porch light was still on, casting a small circle of gold across the steps. For years, that light had been my signal, a way of saying, "I'm here." even when she didn't notice it, even when she drove past without looking. Tonight, for the first time, I left it on for someone who might actually come back. I sat there, rocking slowly, the old chair creaking in rhythm with the wind. Across the street, the Hendersons were setting the table for dinner. Their laughter carried faintly through the dusk. I smiled, remembering how Ellen used to hum while she cooked, how Emily would sneak bites from the counter, giggling every time she thought I wasn't looking. Funny how memories hurt and heal in the same breath. The screen door tapped lightly behind me. I half expected to see Ellen step out, wiping her hands on a dish towel, saying something like, "You waiting for her again?" She'd always known when I was. Instead, it was just the wind again, moving through an empty house that didn't feel quite so empty anymore. I looked down at the porch boards, still faintly marked from where the rain had dried. That's where I'd dropped the locket, where everything began to shift. One small object, one forgotten message, one chance at redemption buried inside it. I whispered to myself, "You did good, Ellen. You always knew what would matter in the end." The night grew darker, and the stars started to show. Somewhere, a dog barked in the distance. I pulled my jacket tighter, leaning back in the chair. It struck me then, how love changes shape over time. When you're young, it's loud, certain, and full of movement. When you get older, it becomes quieter, but deeper. It hides in gestures, in patience, in waiting without resentment. That's what I'd learned. That's what I hoped Emily would too. My phone buzzed once. A message. From her. "Home safe? Thank you, Dad. I'll see you soon." I smiled, typing only 2 words in return. "Always here." Then I set the phone down, letting the quiet return. I looked into the camera, or at least, that's how it would sound if you were sitting across from me now, hearing this story the way I meant it. My voice low, my words slow. I gave my daughter everything. My time, my work, my home, my heart. You heard how she treated me, and you know how I waited for her. I didn't fight her, didn't punish her, didn't even remind her what she owed me. I just kept the light on. So tell me, what should I do now? Should I close the door and let her live her life without me? Should I forgive her and start again, like nothing ever broke? Or should I make her understand the cost of forgetting where she came from? Because no matter what she did, no matter how long she made me wait, I still love her.